It was a quiet morning in 1780 until a group of British officers made a plan that could have ended America before it began. They weren't trying to kill Washington, they were trying to kidnap him. And the reason it failed is something most people have never heard about. This wasn't some far-off dream for them. It came frighteningly close to succeeding. In February of 1780, the men of the Continental Army were low on morale and tired of fighting for their lives, whether from muskets in the spring or storms in the winter. The fact that the Revolutionary War had been ongoing for the previous 5 years or so didn't help. But the Patriots had General George Washington to help ground them and give them the hope they needed to continue fighting for freedom and liberty. The British troops were in a similar spot. They were frustrated and fed up with the revolution. The Americans had kept the British soldiers away from their homes for several years, and the British officers were looking for a way to end the war swiftly. That's where British Lieutenant Colonel John Graves Simcoe comes into the picture. Lieutenant Colonel Simcoe had the bright idea to kidnap General Washington from where he resided in Morristown, New Jersey. It wasn't a battle plan, rather it was a cheat code to victory if it was successfully pulled off. The rebellion would be quashed, the colonies would quickly lose hope, and the New World would roll over to England's every command. However, success was dependent on one thing: the most brutal winter in living memory. If you are new here, real quick, we are trying to reach 100 subs by September. We have already made tremendous strides towards the goal, so if you like American history, be sure to subscribe. Most people have heard of the winter at Valley Forge in 1778, and how the temperatures and diseases killed about 2,000 soldiers. But the winter of 1779 to 1780 in Morristown, New Jersey was breaking 100-year-old records. The temperatures were in the negative double digits, far below freezing, and a total of 95 inches of snow had fallen in a 5-month period. While the 1780 winter was not as deadly to the Continental Army as Valley Forge, the conditions were much worse and far more painful. The snow caused standard roads to be, as a British lieutenant put it, impassable. Transportation on horseback would become tougher as the length of the journey increased, because ice spikes would stab into their horses' fetlocks. All of these reasons are why people were not traveling long distances through the snow. But the severe temperatures also allowed for more creative openings for Lieutenant Colonel Simcoe to be able to capture Washington. Major rivers like the East and Hudson rivers were completely frozen over. Simcoe realized that entire platoons of soldiers could cross the Hudson and proceed towards Washington's position, and so the plan was set into motion. The British Army would send troops across the Hudson in the middle of the night, trek on horseback a short while before hitting the main objective. In normal weather, this would have been suicide, but the conditions were just right, so this plan could actually work. But there was one thing that the British didn't count on. The British arrived in New Jersey on February 11, 1780 at 1 a.m. But the many aforementioned weather struggles caused the British cavalry to slow to a crawl. The weather worsened as a thick shield of snow reduced eyesight drastically, and the company got off course. And you see, a key part of the kidnapping plan was to attack multiple nearby towns and outposts in order to draw the Continental Army away from George Washington. Unfortunately, most of those attacks were not fruitful. The British were either repelled by the Patriots or the targets had already been abandoned. But the main military force continued and pushed their way towards Washington. As they got closer to the esteemed general, an unforeseen horse patrol spotted the British troops and set off the alarm to alert the other Patriots. A firefight broke out and the British retreated back towards the Hudson River. The English army had the plan and the resources, but they were ultimately thwarted by nature and the American patriots. And you know, the thing is, this isn't the only time that someone came so close to ending the war. Throughout the war, there were several close calls for Washington. He was nearly poisoned, betrayed by his own guards, and he was constantly being tracked down by English spies. Because of the many attempts on his life, he learned to become unpredictable, to make it as hard as possible for the British to know his next move. Washington didn't just survive the battles. He survived being England's most wanted person. His discipline and understanding of how valuable he and his fellow generals were saved the country more than once. But not everyone who fought for freedom was so lucky. Washington lived to see victory, but what about the men who signed the Declaration of Independence, only to disappear from history? Some died tragically, some lost everything, and most you've never even heard of. Click here to watch that video.